Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I want to talk about urban decay, or how nature and time wear on abandoned buildings and structures. As photographers, we can appreciate the great beauty that can be found in the broken down, the rusted, the tarnished remnants of another time. Each scene has a history and a story to tell. I'm going to walk you through the story of one of my captures, and we're going to process the photo from start to finish in Lightroom. But first, a little background. A short 30-minute drive from the Las Vegas Strip, Goodsprings, Nevada was founded in 1900 as a mining town, taking advantage of the silver, gold, and other precious minerals nearby. Following World War II, however, the mining slowed and the population dwindled, leaving many buildings abandoned. You may recognize Goodsprings, if you've played Fallout New Vegas, as the place where you set out upon your wasteland journey. This alternate future fiction isn't far off from the present reality, at least visually. The Prospector Saloon is there, as is the general store, anxious to sell you a souvenir t-shirt. Taking a walk through downtown Goodsprings, I explored the remains of a once thriving town. Windows and doors boarded up. Metal sheeting rusted to vibrant shades of lime green and burnt orange. Shacks barely standing in fear of too strong a breeze. I came across a gap in the wall of one of these structures and peered inside with my camera. Here, the years of disrepair had worn a patchwork skylight through which the Mojave sun beat down. At first glance, the dynamic range was just too much for my camera to handle. This would have been a good opportunity to bracket exposures and combine them later using HDR. However, I only took one exposure, so I tried to make the best of it. Let's see what we can extract from the raw file in Lightroom and try to save this photo. This is the image as it came directly out of camera without any adjustments. As you can see, there's so much dynamic range. That's the difference between the lightest tones in an image and the darkest tones in an image. That we've kind of lost the shadows and the highlights are blown out. And you can actually see that from the histogram up here in the upper right-hand corner. All of these tones on the left-hand side, the darker tones are banged up against the left end of the histogram, and we've actually lost a lot of highlight detail on the right. So ideally I would have taken multiple exposures, but for some reason I only took the one. So we're going to see if we can recover these. Before I make any other adjustments, I'm going to go to the lens corrections, and I'm going to remove chromatic aberration, and I'm going to enable profile corrections. That's going to help alleviate some of the distortion that's caused by using a wide-angle lens. Next, I'm going to go up to the basic panel in the profile area, and I'm going to select this little 4 boxes icon. That's going to help me select the way the starting point that Lightroom uses to interpret the colors in the raw image. Now, there are a bunch of different options here. There are the Adobe RAW presets, which a lot of them tend to be pretty good depending on your use case. There's also camera matching color profiles. And what that does is it tries to match what your particular camera manufacturer's out-of-camera JPEGs would look like. I'm going to select the standard camera matching profile because I like the way that interprets the colors for this image, and it's a good starting point. And then I'm going to close that. Next, I'm going to help recover some of those shadows that have been lost by bringing up the shadow slider. And as you can see, there's still a lot of detail there that we can recover. Next, I'm going to bring down the highlights, the brightest tones in the image, to help recover some of those as well. Excellent. What we're doing is compressing that vast dynamic range in the image down to something that can be viewable in one exposure. Now, there is a limit to how much of the highlights I can recover because they are quite blown out, but for the most part, we've brought back a fair amount of detail. Next, I'm going to increase the overall exposure just a little bit. Perfect. Now I'm going to warm up the image by using the white balance slider and increasing the temperature to around 6,000 Kelvin. And then I'm going to bring down the clarity slider just a little bit to soften up some of the harsher details and bring sort of a dreamy quality to the image. Next, I want to do more of a fine-tune, sort of granular adjustment of the colors in the image. And to do that, I'm going to use color grading. Now in the color grading panel, it allows you to adjust the highlights, shadows, and midtones, the sort of coloration of those tones in the image, separately. So I'm going to take the highlight region, which is this circle here, and I'm going to drag the little circle a little bit toward the orange-yellow end of the spectrum, just to warm up the highlights a little bit, maybe a little more orange. Oh, there we go. Next, I'm going to take the shadow regions in this circle here, and I'm going to drag them down toward the blue end of the spectrum, just a little bit, because there's a big blue sky above us here that's reflecting light into the shadows. So the shadows should have a little bit of a bluish tint to them. Next, I'm going to take the midtones, which is the values in the image that are not quite the highlights, not quite the shadows, everything in the middle. And I'm going to warm those up a little bit as well. Great. Now I'm going to adjust the balance. That's going to affect how much bias Lightroom gives the highlights or shadows as far as the coloration in the image. If I hold down the Alt key or the Option, I think it's the Option key in a Mac, and as I drag left to right, you can see, do I want to bias more toward the blue shadows or toward the orange highlights? And I actually want to drive it down just a little bit toward the blue end of the spectrum to bring back, there we go, some of the tones in the shadow regions, that blue. Great. And I might actually drag the shadows a little bit even more toward the blue. There we go. And adjust the balance. Now this gives us a much more over-the-top, exaggerated perspective on the adjustments I'm making when you hold down Alt. So you can see what it's doing. I'll leave that right about in the middle there. Great. Go back up to the basic panel. I'm going to increase saturation to bring back a little bit more of the color that was there, that was lost in the raw translation. And maybe just a hair more warmth. Just do this to your taste. And a little more exposure. Great. Lastly, I'm going to add a little bit of a vignette to draw the viewer's eye into the image, darken the edges just a little bit. And I also feel that creates a greater sense of three-dimensionality. It feels like it draws the viewer's image deep into the photo. As you can see, there's these leading lines from the floorboards here, as well as the shelving on the left and right. Great. And I think I'm pretty much done with this image. Let's take a look at the image by itself, and before all of our corrections, and after. Before and after. And as you could see, we've recovered a lot of this image that seemed to be lost in the initial rendition. Thanks for joining me on my journey through the Old West. I hope you found something in this video that will inspire you to go out and explore these kinds of places and rediscover the beauty that is there. As always, if you like this video, please remember to like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram at Matthew Arrington Photo, or check out my website at MatthewArrington.com, and I'll see you next week.